I hope everybody had a fun and safe holiday weekend. I'm assuming John Calipari did, in part because on Sunday, the Arkansas coach secured a commitment from DJ Wagner, the five-star recruit from the class of 2023, who started 28 games for Cal at Kentucky this past season. Once Cal jumped from Kentucky to Arkansas, DJ entered the transfer portal. He visited USC, visited Arkansas. Ultimately, DJ Wagner decided to become the sixth former Kentucky player or signee to follow John Calipari to Arkansas. And his addition is why I moved the Razorbacks up to number 16 in version 26 of the 2024-25 CBS Sports preseason top 25 and 1 college basketball ranking. Strong Jaw, let's start here. Am I too high on Arkansas? Too low? About right? How do you feel about John Calipari's 8-player team?
First of all, 26 updates is absolutely ridiculous. Go get some sleep, GP. Go take a vacation or something. Go touch some grass.
I'm going to do both of those things sometime soon, perhaps even later this week.
No, I actually think that's probably about right. Maybe a touch higher than where I would rank Arkansas. But on its face, I think you can maybe justify it and do so, at a level that I think you can be confident with. This is an elite recruiting class that John Calipari is bringing in. He's got some big names coming out of the portal with Adu Thiero, John L. Davis, Jonas Adu. And I think there's been like a whole lot of hubbub, just like how Cal has built things over the years at Kentucky. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, the Arrested Development scene where it's like, well, did it work for those people? Did it work for Kentucky? Well, no, it really never did, but they delude themselves into thinking it might, and it might work for Arkansas. I think that's probably how Arkansas fans are feeling right now. It's like there's a lot of excitement because Arkansas really has not been built this way over the years under Muss, under previous coaches. And to be able to get high-level talent, to be able to get guys out of the transfer portal, to really kind of pick and choose who you want to bring in, I think is exciting for Arkansas. We'll see how it works out, but I think clearly validated as a top 20 team right now with DJ Wagner coming in. Basically, the entire Kentucky operation just moving from Lexington over to Fayetteville.
And that's the way it was expected to go. Like I wrote on Memorial Day, this is notable but unsurprising. I think we assumed John would be able to take some Kentucky recruits with him. He has. I think we assumed we would be able to take some Kentucky players with him. He has. And particularly a player like DJ that he's quite literally known since he was born. Yeah. What's interesting is right now Arkansas has 8 players. 3 of them are the sons of people who played for John Calipari, and 3 of them are the sons of people like I covered as a beat writer. I covered DeJuan, DJ's father, at Memphis. I covered Billy Richmond Sr., Billy Richmond Jr.'s father at Memphis. I really covered Billy Richmond in high school all the way back to when he was a prep star. And then, of course, Adu Thiero, I covered his father, El Mami, when he was at Memphis. So there's a lot of Kentucky connections here, but also more broadly speaking, just a lot of John Calipari connections to this first Arkansas team he's going to have. And you're exactly right. Like when I say it's a top 20 team on paper, I mean that it should be. And if there are skeptics out there, I understand, because I imagine what you would say is, well, my God, GP, he had 2 top 10 picks on his team last season. And, I watched the Oakland game and he hadn't been to a Final Four since 2015. Like I understand, I get it. I'm just saying that just because it hadn't worked well for John Calipari recently, consistently, doesn't mean that it never worked well for John Calipari. He did go to 4 Final Fours at Kentucky. And I think he's got a roster right now with, 3 projected starters who started all season last season for NCAA tournament teams. Like the way Kentucky finished was awful, and it led to a lot of different changes throughout college basketball. But they were a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. It's not like that team was terrible, even if it was perhaps a bit disappointing and incredibly disappointing at the end. But like DJ Wagner started for a team that was a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. John L. Davis started first for a Final Four team, and then for an FAU team that made a second straight trip to the NCAA tournament. And Jonas Adu, he started for a Tennessee team that, produced the SEC Player of the Year and was a legitimate Final Four contender. So when you have three guys who started for really good teams last season, that's a great place to start. And then you supplement it with, some 5-star or at least top 30 level freshmen in Boogie Flan and Billy Richmond and Carter Knox. Big Z transfers over. Like I said, Tierro's a third-year player who, was a real rotation piece for a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. He'll add some more, probably won't get to 13, but just based on what they got on paper, that looks like a team that should be among the favorites, not the favorite, but among the favorites in the SEC.
Yeah, and I would add to GP that, there's obviously some appeal. Like DJ Wagner is a starter. He played in the SEC, former 5-star recruit. He's got great credentials. It also feels like maybe a little bit of a downside with his resume as well, because last season at Kentucky, you mentioned 2 projected top 10 picks on this roster, Rob Dillingham and Reed Sheppard. For the most part, all season, were not starting for Kentucky. They were by far, if you look at pivot analysis, by far the most effective players in terms of on-off metrics. And both all season basically came off the bench, except for a few times because of injury. Wagner rated worst on the team in those metrics with pivot analysis. Started almost every single game. If you look at Bart Torvik's numbers, rated Wagner as the least efficient player for Kentucky on offense. And he was team worst with a 45.9% effective field goal percentage, 49.6% true shooting percentage. He had an ankle injury, and obviously he's a freshman, so I think there's some adjustment, and I still believe in DJ Wagner, but just maybe some context to keep in mind if you're Arkansas, that there's a lot to like about DJ Wagner. I think he's a future NBA player, but the fact that he was starting for Kentucky last season over Reed Sheppard and Rob Dillingham, I'm not probably reading too much into that.
Take your college basketball hat off for a second. Put on your NBA draft hat. There was a moment where DJ Wagner was ranked as the number 1 player in his high school class. When I saw him very early, I can remember actually sitting in a gym in Vegas at an event, and there's a young DJ Wagner there. I'm sitting with Wani, with Cal, with Tony Barbie, with I think Arthur Barclay was there, who was a teammate of Wani's at Camden, who also came to Memphis. Literally people I've known for 20. It was kind of a sweet moment, watching Wani's son, and he looked the part, man. If you'd have told me, fast forward 3 years and that guy's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft, I would have been like, yeah, I could see it. In fact, I think I said that on this podcast way back then when I watched Jalen Duren. I said, I just don't see the number 1 pick in the draft. And that became a thing. But sort of to hammer home my point, I was like, now when I watch DJ Wagner, I do see somebody who could be the number 1 pick in the draft. And now if he were in this draft, he might not get picked. You touched on a lot of it there. Just adding to that, what happened?
He wasn't terribly efficient. His offensive numbers were not great. Like I said, they were the worst on the team in terms of effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage. He's not the most athletic combo guard, and I think if you're projecting what he's going to be from high school to the college level, you're thinking, okay, well he's a good sized guard who can dribble, who can pass, who can shoot, and defensively, I think size wise, I think he'll hold up pretty well. And if you look at kind of the lineup data from last season, I think Cal probably stuck with Wagner as one of the starters, in part because one of the best lineups defensively for Kentucky involved DJ Wagner. But offensively, I think he trailed a little bit, struggled to shoot the ball, struggled getting downhill. And I think he didn't really have a ton of confidence as well. There's a huge leap going from high school to college. And I think we probably underestimate that because we've seen guys like Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett, some guys who made the leap and made it look effortless. That was not the case with DJ Wagner. It's not the case with every highly touted 5-star recruit. So, I think this will be a good kind of transition year for him. He's a little bit older, a little bit more wiser. This is a system that I think is set up for him to maybe to thrive in a little bit more. But certainly, I think last season, given the expectations as a 5-star recruit, someone who could be a potential lottery pick, Yeah, it was pretty much worst case scenario for him in terms of where his draft stock is, as we sit here right now.
Yeah, I know this wasn't his plan to be a second-year player at Arkansas,
Yeah.
after a relatively speaking disappointing freshman year. But sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes these five-star freshmen who, for whatever reason, spend a second year in college, like that can be a breakthrough for them, and perhaps it'll be for DJ. Either way, like I said, I've got Arkansas up to 16th in the top 25 and one, and that would actually put them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th in the SEC, because right now I have it, if I'm ranking them in order, Alabama, then Auburn, then Texas A&M, then Tennessee, then Arkansas, followed by Florida and Texas. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams in the top 25 and one come from the SEC.